But I have to say the hosting from Yper City Council was superb, notwithstanding it was almost Christmas holidays, and some of their senior staff had gone off on Christmas holiday, and kids were breaking up from school and that sort of thing. But summer holidays, yeah. And Jan Jerez, the mayor, greeted us. We met with another councillor and officials, but very customer focused the way they operate, and as I said, high tech everything. You can't just walk up to the counter there. You use an app and you get hold of them, or you text them and that sort of thing, and then there's someone waiting for you at the counter. So it was really interesting how they work. I did look at the library. I did put the photographs. I'm going to send those to you personally. Interesting enough, the library in Yper is actually built into apartments and with shops around it. It was an interesting concept. And there's a public-private partnership with their library, so something that we can look at. Obviously, we'll be looking at different models for the Rototuna Library. So I think, I think we're really lucky to have this relationship, and I have to say, you've got to take my hat off to Peter Boss, and as I said, unless you go there, you actually don't realise the significance of the relationship, and I think we're lucky that people like Peter and Luke Tahana actually have forged this special relationship between the city. Probably the thing now is their city's very keen to look at the city-to-city relationship going forward. How do we make it more than just a spiritual and cultural type relationship? A lot of agriculture around Yper and that sort of thing, and I know that Sir William Gallagher's been there, and other business people as well, but I think, how do we leverage off that, and obviously mutual tourism opportunities as well going forward. So we met the appropriate officials there who we can carry on those discussions, how we actually work together going forward. Yper's quite a significant city, and it has a bit of clout in Brussels as well. So I think we're well placed to actually work closer with them, especially around maybe some education swaps, the economic side of things, and the tourism. It does. Yeah, it does. So there's two spellings.
Oh, that's an I.
Yeah, it's an I.
Right.
So we're a bit lucky that I don't know if you know Virginie Mana. She's in my team. She's actually Belgian, and Virginie went on holiday at the same time. I think we left the same day. Virginie went on holiday with her family, and she's from Bruges. So Virginie's also a member of the Last Post Association. So her and her husband Donald came down to Yper and for the 90th. Celebration that night, so that was really good, and having someone who can speak Flemish is helpful too. I've got a Flemish name, but unfortunately I don't speak it, but it did help in some ways. But having Virginie there for that night and the next morning was really helpful for Andrew and I, opening a few doors and really cementing that relationship. So I'm not sure, Virginie, if you want to say any words from your point of view.
You're on, Virginie.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, probably Lance has covered most of it, but I just also wanted to say how important it was for Mayor Andrew and Lance to actually be there, and then by going there you can really feel and understand what's happened and the horror of the war that went on there. And also when you're over there, you realize how far away they were all from their homes, even though now you hop on the plane, they had to go on the boat for 6 weeks or so, had no idea where they were going. So when you're there, you really do feel that, and you understand it a lot better. And then when you see all the graves of the very young soldiers that have died there, and so yeah, it really makes you realize the enormity of the sacrifice that all the New Zealanders made as well. So for me, I was really happy that they went there and that they felt that as well. When we moved to Hamilton, me and my family moved to Hamilton about 2 years ago, and so whenever we had New Zealand visitors, we would take them around all the cemeteries and the war memorials, and then also attend the Last Post under the Menin Gate. So for me to share that experience, the 90th Last Post, together with Mayor Andrew and Lance, was really special. It was really moving, and I'll never forget it. So I think that's probably, let's look if I've written down anything else. Like Lance said, also having a Hamilton Garden in Yper is a huge deal, and I think it will be really good. It will strengthen the bond between the cities, and and continue for the younger generations to keep commemorating what's happened, and also the shared history that Hamilton and Ypres have. And lastly, I suppose on behalf of the Belgian people, I would like to say thank you to the New Zealand soldiers that did go there and who helped, who helped free us from all the from what was going on, and the Belgian people do feel honoured to look after the Kiwi graves and all the other soldiers every day. So, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, so the weather there was sort of 28 to 34 degrees C all the time, day and night. It was, I don't know whether it's a heat wave or what, but the whole 4.5 weeks I was away, there was just beautiful weather all the time. The 90th Last Post Association actual event, up and above Meningate there's big holes, and there were thousands of people there, and the Commonwealth grave people were there, and they just poured petals from poppies through the top throughout the service, and it was just raining down, and petals, of course, a petal for each life, and it's mind-blowing, just the lives that are lost. That Meningate is huge. It might be 50 metres long, and it's huge and round and full of arches, and in little print there's names of all the soldiers. The New Zealanders aren't in there because we chose to have our guys buried as close as possible to where they died, but there wouldn't have been room there anyway, and it's totally full, and those aren't the names of the lost lives, those are the names of the bodies that were never found. So it just does your head in. It's huge, the loss of life. There's a story about the blue mud that, a documented story about the blue mud that Lance was talking about, and there's a soldier in a trench, and his mate said, "I will dig you out." He was up to his waist, and he said, "Mates, I'm on my horse." Okay, that's just the mud everywhere, just sucking everybody down. Crazy, just the whole thing, just mortar, holes from just bullets and big, arms and stuff everywhere. Still finding them now alive. Farmers getting killed on their tractors ploughing paddocks from, ammunition going off still today. And they know of huge areas where there's huge storages underground of ammunition that they still haven't got to get out where they'd stored it. And of course it's difficult because some of this is mustard gas and some of this is, past its use-by date, so it's, it's unstable. The museum there was just absolutely stunning. It was, look, this place got totally destroyed down to nothing during the war. The stuff was maybe, the highest point might have been a couple of metres off the ground that was left. Winston Churchill wanted the whole thing left how it was and not rebuilt as a reminder of war, and just leave it as just not rebuilt. But the people of Ypres wouldn't do that. It was their properties, and they just came in and rebuilt it anyway. And in the end, the British government had to fall into line and allow money to come through from Germany and Britain to rebuild it. The museum is just absolutely stunning and huge, and next to it's a cathedral, and it's hard to fathom where the money came from to rebuild all that, not long after the war. They looked after us very well. They took us out for dinner. They took us drinking one night to a monastery where the beer was made by monks, and you could only buy this beer if you booked it in advance by telephone. They recorded your phone number. You could only use one phone number. You had to say what the registration number of your car was, and then you turn up to pick up the beer. This is commonly regarded as the best beer in the world. And you would turn up and you would get 2 crates of beer. Was it 2 or 1? I think it was 2. 2 crates of beer, and they would tell you what time to turn up at the monastery to pick it up. And you had to match with your registration number, and then you weren't allowed back for 2 months to pick up your next lot, and you had to book it all again. And on this beer it's like wine, they have a date to drink it stamped on the cap. There's no label on it, and on the cap is a date, and that's when it's mature, and it matures in the bottle. And this beer is 12% alcohol. And you would think you were just drinking 4% beer, our 4.5% beer like we have here, and it just brought a whole new respect, for beer for me, because it's like their beer is like wine for us. You know, we have special wines, and some that are better than others, and some that, you know, have to be drunken at a Best By date and things like that. Well, they're the same with their beer, and it's just a whole new look at it. Once again, Peter Boss and Luke Dehana. Look, you'd think that Peter was a bit of a lunatic the way he goes on about this whole thing if you haven't been there. And once you've been there, you realise what he's set up for generations to come between Hamilton and IPA. Now, everybody now wants to get in with IPA on a relationship, but we are there. We are the people who have the relationship in New Zealand. And as Lance said, it's an absolutely beautiful city. The whole thing's, all the streets are cobblestone. And what my son said, who lives in Belgium, he rides for a triathlete team in Belgium, what he said, Dad, this is the best city in Belgium I've been to, because all the others are really old because they didn't get damaged as badly in the war. But this looks old, but it's only 100 years old. So it's actually much more functional than some of the other cities because it got rebuilt. Politics, imagine sitting around a council table with 36 people. So you get in, everyone gets voted in, and then it's all party-based. So it's not like here where we're all representing ourselves. Over there it's all party-based, aligned with central government, aligned with Brussels, and you're in a party. And then what happens after the election is you get together and you choose a majority of the parties, and then they are basically it for the term. So they call a shot. So it would be like 6 of us or 7 of us getting together, doing a deal, and just cutting everybody else for the rest of the term, and the others just but there it's it's accepted of that's how it works, and they have their own cabinet office and their own, you know, room that they meet, and everywhere we went, like we're there at 10 o'clock in the morning having a meeting in the council chambers, and you know, we finished the meeting and out comes the champagne, and it's French champagne. Everywhere we went, it was French champagne. It wasn't Marquez Vu, you know. And then of course. And then of course the World Cup football was on, and Belgium were looking really good, and in there. It was interesting, actually, one of the photos there, you can see the town squares full of cars. I just thought I'd throw that in. But anyway, they were cleared the town square out and when they had events on. So the cars would be there when there weren't events. When the events were on, they clear it out and they put a big screen in, and the place would just absolutely be pumping. And they wouldn't have ZM type music. They would have proper full-on dance music, you know, in every gap, full volume. The whole place is just absolutely pumping. So it's just it's a relationship we've got to foster. Now, what's in it? You'd ask economically, what's in it? Well, they are farming and agriculture heavily based that way, and so are we. But the tourism thing is where I see the big connection. And people from this country want to go there, and I believe people from there want to come here, and I believe that that's a big thing that can be built and fostered as we go forward. Yeah, of course, we're both beer drinkers, so both countries, but, you know, we're quite closely aligned. They will go out, they understand, and I don't know whether this comes from the war or where it comes from, but they understand honouring people, and they'll sit around in cafes, and their restaurants all have tables out on the street, and they'll sit around for hours, and you won't see a cell phone on the table. Now, they're the same as us, same ages as us, same cell phone, but they don't have the culture, and I never really got to the bottom of it, but you just don't see people on the phone texting, emailing, talking. Their phones are away, and I think that's part of the culture that they want to enjoy the good things in life, and part of the good things in life are each other and enjoying each other while we've got each other. So it was a moving trip, really, wasn't it, Lance?
And just to finish, in November, Luke Dehana and one of their councillors coming up for our 100th Armistice Day celebrations here. So, quite happy to investigate that.
What day do you want to pick yours up, Dave?
Could have a councillors' staff working party on that.
What time do you want to pick it up?
So I just want to thank, firstly, particularly Peter Boss and Luke Dehaan, who are the founders of this relationship. Virginie, thank you for going on your own money, on your family holiday and connecting up with us and making it so much fun. Lance,
I didn't do anything.
Richard, thank you for letting Lance go, because it's the beginning of building a relationship forward long-term outside of whoever our councillors, whoever our elected members at the time.
I just needed a break from Lance, so I was happy.
So, and yeah. So, yeah, thanks all for yeah, sharing our story, sharing in our story and listening. Right. We haven't got that far yet. Do we have to receive that and... Yeah, hang on. So I'm just going to hand over now to Dave, just for an update on rail.
Chris is going to give that.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Chris.
Very brief. It would be good. I'm going to give our staff an extra job. Could we just tell Peter Boss where this particular clip is on the this live stream? Because I know Peter would be really, if he's not watching. No, seriously. No, just do that and send him the report, because I think he would, from the point of all the work he's done, he would find that, because basically what you've done is this whole relationship is coming to massive fruition, and I think, you know, this is an absolute legacy. The other thing from Lance, could you, as part of your reporting from time to time to Paula's committee, just as the Hamilton Park does develop, I think there's a clip that would be really useful for us to track that. Because we are the only New Zealand city, and other cities are very envious that we got in and we got this relationship going. And I know that this is, yeah, as you've said, Mayor, don't underestimate the significance of this one across a whole range of areas, actually. So, a very good report.
Yeah, 8,000 of our soldiers either lost their lives or were injured within a 4-hour period. It's the biggest loss our country's ever had and hopefully will ever have in history.
Is that passion?
And yeah, which is right there. So it was the birthing of our nation, I think, at that point where we grew up very quickly. All right, moving on to trains.
Okay, thank you. Just a very quick update. Like, I had thought today that we would need a council decision just on a no cost to council funding process issue, but discussions today between NZTA and KiwiRail have averted that. So it's a good opportunity just to give you a quick update on the train service. Council did have a comprehensive report back at Growth and Infrastructure on 29th of May. There you resolved for us to report back to Council once the detailed business case had been completed by 1 October 2018. So look, I'm just happy to report that really good progress has been made on that. The target for us is to take the business case to the New Zealand Transport Agency on the 5th of October. So it's more or less on time. I've just got a meeting scheduling date to sort out. As I said, very good progress. The government and its agencies through Ministry of Transport and the New Zealand Transport Agency, they're very supportive of the start-up service, and they're working really well with all of the stakeholders, KiwiRail, ourselves, Auckland, to do the business case. The detailed business case will confirm that the government will be meeting a substantial portion of the costs of the start-up service, so that's all developing nicely. There's 4 key areas that we're just working on, and they're around who will run the service, who will own the rolling stock, ticketing and access to the Auckland network, but all of those are going quite nicely in terms of resolving how that will be managed. So council's role in this is really the infrastructure at Rotokauri and the rail. Regional council will be leading the operations of the service. Our role is to provide the rail platform at Rotokauri. So really pleased to see that there's funding opportunities opening up through the new government policy statement and transitional rail. So our funding requirements will be less of our own money and more of money out of New Zealand Transport Agency, which is really good. So look, we're pursuing all of those opportunities to reduce the costs and make it successful. So look, that's the update, and we'll probably at the 4th of September, Growth and Infrastructure, have a bit more of an update as we get close to the time. So happy to answer any questions, Your Worship.
Yes, Councillor Dave.
I was just going to add that it's proved to be more work for Chris than he ever imagined to start with. He's now being called the controller rather than the general manager, as in the fat controller. But Chris has been doing an enormous amount of work above and beyond what the CEO originally asked him to do, along with Mike Garrett, I might add, from the Regional Council, who was trained by us as well, so that's good. You know, and if it wasn't for people like that here pushing it, it wouldn't have happened, notwithstanding government policies and NZTAs and all sorts. It's taken a really big push, and our council, to be honest, has been the leading force in that. But interestingly, Waikato District Council, who some had suggested was dragging the chain and joining in, I had a discussion with 3 of their elected members the other night, and all of them were agreeing, without me prompting them. They raised the issue that they would need to be putting in more of their own funding for operational purposes in future, which is something they've not yet agreed to do. So I think the mood is changing around, everyone's seeing it's happening and they want to be on board, so it's all looking pretty good.
Deputy Mayor Martin.
We see in the media, for example, you know, the digging the tunnels out in Auckland, and then the concept that could be used as base course to improve the track in Te Kawhata. I'm looking at the big long-term sort of huge, you know, second stage capital project in terms of the Auckland-Hamilton freight and for passengers. Have we any update on that, or can I just request through Dave's committee we're kept in the loop, particularly if we have to make some lobbying and submissions in that area?
Yeah, it's probably best that we take an action to come back. The notion is right. They were looking for an opportunity to place all of the excess dirt from the CRL into the swamp at Whangamarino, so it could be double track through there. So it's one section of the whole Auckland to Hamilton connection that's sort of substandard and hard to double track. So if that could happen, it would be great. There's consenting and cultural issues, but I think they are making progress on that. So I would be happy to give an update on the GNI.
They support this about a month ago as well. They were very quick to support it from a economic development viewpoint.
And that's even that is exceptionally, for me, very useful information, so that we do know the lie of the land, and certainly particularly the significance of Tainui support for a whole range of reasons. Obviously that fills into the whole commuter corridor, Te Kawhata, and their proposal at Meremere. So I think sort of that, I know you're doing it, but back to Dave's committee, that long-term reporting, because I would assume that from a PR and communications point of view, we need to keep communicating that we're looking for high-speed freight and rail in the long term. So it's not just the slow train. Eventually, if people are within an hour, if there's only an hour journey between Hamilton and Auckland, that becomes a mega game changer in terms of the whole use of that. Obviously, the significance of freight and the double tracking, let alone the third tracking in Auckland. So I look forward to that update report, but I agree with Dave. I think you guys are doing fantastic pulling this thing together, really.
So just on this point, what we're looking at is the interim startup service, but government at the moment are doing a big rail options report with a view to informing the next government policy statement on transport. So
just I think, if I can say in comms, I don't think you can ever do enough of reminding our community what our medium to long-term game plan is. It's not just about a diesel with 2 or 3, carriages 2 times a day. Ultimately we share the vision of the sort of hourly fast train or whatever, a real commuter service in terms of convenience, so that there's a mega incentive for people to jump out of the cars, avoid the Manurewa traffic jam car park. And so I think it's really the comms And with our new comms person arriving, dare I say it, I think it would be really quite useful that we can't do enough, I think, of sharing that vision personally.
Just a word on that. There's a table from the Regional Council's just produced that's going to come up for discussion at a workshop of ours quite soon, amongst other transport things, that shows what the short-term start-up service will look like, what a medium-term service will look like, and what the long-term objective is, and we can have a discussion about whether we agree with that, want to tweak that.
Okay, moved by myself, seconded by Deputy Mayor. All those for, any against, carried unanimously.
You've got a chair of a GNI, get him to second this.
Okay, so we're now item 14, page 136. Yep. Myself and Deputy Mayor. Nick, what are you here for? Are you here for several things, aren't you?
Yes, so pretty much items.
Okay, we'll just power through and we'll get to you soon. So, okay, so page 136, moved by myself, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All those for? Okay. So this is the governance structure 2016-19 midterm review.
I have questions.
Yes, Councillor, Deputy Mayor Martin.
Councillor Bunting.
Councillor Mark.
Just querying the, there's a bit of stuff around the task forces here, and as it seems to be the only thing I'm interested in here. What's the,
Where are you, Mark? What?
all the work around the, we're on the governance review, right?
Yes.
Yes, structure review. I'm just getting to it there. It's pretty near the, oh yeah, here we go. Page 145. So approval of all council and committee task forces and their terms of references. What was the rationale for the change for that? I'm just trying to work out, has there been some sort of sea change in thinking, or what was missing in that? Anyone?
Well,
Bueller? I'm trying to...
I can start if you
thank
like.
you,
So
Lydia.
the C's just walked back in, but my understanding is that there was a wish to streamline and optimise the way in which task forces are set and managed, and as a consequence of that, that it was simpler and more transparent if all task forces are created by council and effectively approved to be established by council. They may then report into other committees, I believe, Mayor Andrew, is that correct? But that the actual establishment of them is a responsibility of council, not one of the other committees.
I think I got a little bit concerned about 4 months in when we first started, and then we end up with about 12 task forces running on all sorts of things, and really there were some really good task forces that came out of it that, you know, that came through with some really good outcomes, but we were very quick to set up task force, and I just wanted to actually put a bit of structure around that and make it a bit more formal than just let's just set up a task force, put your hands up, we'll do it, you know.
That was previous, wasn't it? That was the previous arrangement.
Yeah, no, I'm really happy with how it's going now, because there seems to be a responsibility around it to realise when we set up a task force, a lot of work goes with it.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, no, that was all pretty cool. And there was one, I don't want to sort of be awkward about this, but it's going to sound awkward. The single-year community grants and the multi-year community grants allocation committee, I'd quite like to be on that, having had that sort of experience in the past, but I don't want to make a big scene out of it. You know what I mean? Or contest it, especially since neither James nor Siggy are here. Can I just get involved in that, or just turn up?
No, you can't. I don't think you're just allowed to turn up to that one, are you?
No.
I've got a couple of changes that I want to bring, ones that are in the GNI committee area as well. Why don't we ask people to contact you by a certain date before the next meeting? Because I think it would be wrong to do it on the fly at this meeting.
I'd agree with that, totally.
Yeah, so I'll just put a procedural motion that will hold us over to the next meeting, and it gives a chance for people to come and talk, and we'll just get this sorted out.
Yeah, great.
That's probably the best way to do it, so. Yeah, this whole item. Yeah.
Oh, all yours.
You can't.
Yeah, but yeah.
For your procedural motion.
Yeah,
you
okay.
give it a read.
If,
We're in here. It's a resolution to close reading.
and say subject to further refinement.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Okay, let's do it next time. I'll bring it to you.
It can still be passed, it's just the implementation of some of it's going to be amended at the next meeting, that's all.
Yeah.
Pass it, I'll move it.
Sorry, it was my fault. I was distracted.
So I haven't moved that motion yet or taken a seconder, so yes. No, I'm not moving it yet until we, because once it's up, there's no discussion, and I'm just want to.
Motion because I seconded it with enthusiasm.
can I just point out for clarity, so that the motion or the recommendation that was in your papers covered A and B. C is an obvious addition given the decision taken earlier today by this council regarding Māori representation, and the CE is just asked for the addition of D, and he may wish to speak to that.
Okay, I have asked for D to go in. I had mentioned it to the members. Effectively, Reaper's now at the point that I'd prefer to bring it into a management operation, mainly because we're now at a position we're going to start recommending, potentially recommending to council plan changes, and I'd rather keep the governance and the management aspect of that separate, so that management can bring forward without any governance oversight. I don't want to blur the lines of management and governance, Mr McPherson or Councillor McPherson. Yeah. No, we've got a directors meeting later today. I'll bring it up then. Sorry.
So what I think we'll do is we'll go with the motion. We'll put an E on there to say that we can bring back, we can readdress it next.
No one's seeking to change the wording of what's in here, it's the membership of some of
Yeah.
And apart from it, my D, none of the task forces are affected either.
So Deputy Mayor, you withdraw your procedural motion with me? Okay, done. All right, so we've got an E on there. Everyone happy with that? Okay. Gary, did you want to speak?
Well, just notice that further minor changes will be reported back. That assumes that those changes will be accepted.
For approval.
Okay, all right, as long as it says that in there. And I had a couple of questions on the previous thing, but is this all going to come back again, is it?
If you've got anything you want to talk to me about, come and talk to me.
Okay.
And then we'll wrap that all up when we bring it back. Any minor...
Okay, they're just little things.
Yeah. Okay, Deputy Mayor?
So if I want to get support to re-establish the River Plan Task Force, do I just lobby and then come to council, do I, on that? How do I do that? Because you're saying, I mean, I'm saying you've codified the task. A serious question is, you've codified a task force process. So if anyone's got an idea that we think a particular work should be done, limited time, all of that, then that's just notified to
Yeah, just want to get approval of the majority of the members when we do set up a task force, because I don't want to be too flippant about setting them up. And there was nothing in the last...
Yeah, so it would be quite, I think probably Leanne may want to just, you know, if some of us have got ideas, you know, and you know I've got views on Heritage River, all this stuff, what process I should adopt. In other words, if someone believes something should happen, that there might be a gap in our process.
Just bearing in mind, the reason that when they originally established task forces, they were for a specific task, for a specific duration, with a very clear achievement of outcomes all time. And that was just part of the reason that me wanted to bring them back to the council, was to provide that filter to make sure it had all the right aspects of terms of reference attached to it. Yeah.
And the other question I've got, but I can follow up with Leanne, I mean, obviously, particularly in light of some of the significant decisions we've made today, I do think that the issue of the delegations to our standing committees as a whole is important. You know, that trying to get a balance between what is the appropriate delegations to a committee versus requiring approval of full council. But I assume Leanne's always available to take individual members through some of those issues?
I'm happy to clarify those delegations are very well set out through our governance structure in the delegations to officers policy, so I'm happy to provide advice on that at any point.
Thank you. No, yeah, that's fine.
Can I just helpfully put a little bit of Occam's razor into this and say that E could just say, you could take the word "that" out. So notes there may be minor changes. Take some further out.
Councillor Paula? No, this is questions.
Oh, no, I'm all right. I'm just going to say make a comment in debate. Thanks.
You can take some out.
Okay, so moved by myself, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. We'll move to debate. Councillor Paula.
Okay, just want to acknowledge, since they're not here, thank you for supporting the inclusion of the reference to environment in the Community Services and Environment Committee. I'm really pleased to see this step. I didn't think about it myself in the beginning, so I won't take the credit. This came from Councillor Casson and was strongly supported by Councillor Henry. So all credit to them. I just want to acknowledge them for seeing this need, and I fully supported it as soon as they made me aware of the focus on environment being a little less visible. So now that we have that word environment in our committee, Lance and I and Ryan, we've already spoken about how we reflect to the community a greater awareness of what it is we're doing in the environmental side of our business, because we are actually doing things, and there may be more things we can do, but around the reporting and transparency about what we're doing in the environment, isn't that right, Lance? Yeah. So I'm really happy, and I just wanted, since they weren't here, both weren't here today, to acknowledge them for putting this forward. Thank you.
Okay, all those for? Any against? Carried unanimously. Okay, we'll now move to page 178, item 15, municipal endowment, sale of land, 79 Norton Road. Welcome, Nicholas Wells.
Questions?
Okay, moved by myself, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All those for? Yes, Councillor Paula.
What's it? Who's it? Is it being sold to a private individual for what purpose, or?
No, it's currently vacant. There's no current lessee, and so the proposal is to place it on the open market for sale to the highest bidder.
Okay, so just in that respect, question, because we are trying to place a number of people into leases. We are really short of property for some of the things that our community groups would like to do. Was there no opportunity, and maybe this is Lance or Richard to answer, was there no opportunity to use, because once this is gone, it's gone, and sure, it makes a small impact on our books for a very minor moment, but was there no opportunity to use this strategic property for any of the community groups that have been seeking an interest in space? And there are some.
There was a discussion between Corrections, who previously held the lease, and the Runanga about establishing a facility on the site. That facility was intended to be a short stay accommodation kind of facility for solo mums. But those negotiations basically broke down. The basis of that deal was that the improvements which are owned by Corrections would be sold to the Runanga. They would purchase those, or they'd be transferred in some way, and that the Runanga would then enter into a lease on the premises on the same basis as Corrections, which is standard market rental. I think the thing to note with these MEF, Municipal Endowment Fund properties, is that they are required to return a commercial rate. They're not a community subsidised asset.
And there's no interest in the wider community apart from Corrections for anyone to, because it looks like a really good space in a good area. There's no market for market rental or lease?
No, we haven't had any other approaches, but then we also haven't gone out to the market on that basis.
Because I'm just wondering, I mean, I understand the endowment fund and what have you, but once it's gone, and has that minor impact for a short period of time. You hold on to land which becomes more invaluable. It's more strategic, as we know. We're just about to try to acquire land, so it would have been, I don't know, was there more we could have done to attract a really good quality use on the site and have the benefit of ongoing rent?
Yes, I suppose the other thing to note with this particular site, as with all of these ground leases, is that the council owns the land only. All of the improvements are owned by the lessee. And in that respect, they effectively are the party who are best placed to secure a purchaser for those improvements. The other thing to point out is that the ground leases typically return a fairly low yield. So in terms of an asset and its performance, these are not high-performing assets for the council.
So when we sell it, we only get the land portion of the sale anyway?
We do. The land actually has a reasonably high value, as you'll note in there. 1.25 million is the 1.2 million is the valuation estimate. In terms of council's financial position, pretty much any time we sell these ground leases, we're in a better financial position than retaining them. Okay. And that's certainly the case here. Our modelling suggests that our key financial indicator, debt to revenue, would be improved, not massively, but would be improved by selling rather than retaining the land.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Dave.
Raised this, I had some qualms about it, and she's actually encapsulated some of them. I think that when we're in the position like this with strategic property, that given the nature of the previous use, could be used by the sorts of groups Paul has referred to or intimated, I think we should be doing more than just automatically going out to the market. It's true that that others own it, so own the improvements on it, but we can act as a broker in those sort of situations, or a liaison or whatever, to bring parties together. And we, as a council, we are well aware of several other groups that are urgently seeking properties of somewhat similar nature. Now, I think this is premature, this move. So I'm wanting to know what sort of, I appreciate Nick's position, his job's to get the best financial return from our properties, basically. But as a wider council look, where, maybe to the Chief Executive, where is it that we have an overview of the different parts of council's work? Because we've been trying to do a lot of work on finding some properties for some other people.
So we've been quite, I suppose, narrow, to be fair, Councillor McPherson, which is what you're suggesting. This is endowment property, and effectively, if we were to use it for other purposes, the endowment property would effectively have to sell the property to council. It can be done. I'm not saying that's an excuse not to do it.
That's not
an excuse to do it.
But that's not even strictly correct, because we've discussed this before in council for a number of years, and we can, while we have a policy and there is a practice that needs to be followed and it's got some legalities there, we could choose, for instance, to have one part subsidise the lease. It doesn't have to be a sale.
Yep, but that's the same. We don't physically transfer it. There's an accounting outcome to achieve that. Okay. So effectively, we can't put, for example, straight on it as an endowment property community occupancy lease, but if we treated it as if it was a community asset, we could do so as long as the endowment fund at least got its recovery rate at the debt interest costs and so forth. So we can achieve that. So yes, we can do that. We haven't sought to do it. Lance, is there anything off the top of your head that, have you any thoughts on this property?
Sorry, I've been out of the loop on this.
I'm not asking if you know what
He's been drinking beer and EPA.
No, it's fine. I was just on the dump
because of that reason.
Yeah. He's waiting to return to Belgium.
There's only an $8,000 difference between what we've been achieving leasing it and what the return we'd get on the gross sale expected.
Yep. So, I mean, it's always an option for council to go down that track. I mean, I've challenged Nick to sell anything we can. Full stop. That isn't tied down, mainly so I can contribute towards my savings targets.
But if it goes into the municipal endowment fund, that's not yours.
It's a reduction in interest costs, which I've clearly indicated in my report to Council on the 26th of June. I'm taking full responsibility of driving down.
But that's only going to bank you $8,000 a year.
It'll be my first $8,000, Councillor McPherson. It's quite a good start.
You mean you haven't started already while we've all been on holiday?
That's right.
Seriously, could we not be actually taking a little bit of a wider look at these situations? It may not be this one, but you know, sometimes it might be worth more to the city in the long run to do something different from what we normally do.
And to be fair, we have done that in the past. For example, we have looked at our various properties around the city for emergency housing opportunities to work with central government agencies and so forth when they've come up. When we did that work, this one was actually taken off the table because of negotiations that were in play between the corrections and the Runanga. But we have had those conversations as well. So we do it, but in this case we didn't because of the timing of what was done previously.
I'm aware that the DHB and groups like the Runanga and others are currently talking about that respite care somewhere between Henry Bennett Centre and people being out in the community, people with mental health problems, and there's a real problem getting space for that. And I don't know what the problem with the Runanga is, but there are other contractors to the DHB other than them that potentially could be in that space. If the building was ideal for that, that's a place you'd get your market rent from, for instance, or lease amount. So, you know, I just would like to, and the DHB's about to start sort of looking at contracts in that area.
If there's an agency that's willing to pick it up, I mean, to be honest, we're at your instruction. There's an instruction in front to look at selling it. We're more than comfortable to pursue over their endeavours at Council's wish.
Would it be useful if we perhaps put this on hold for 6 months while we explored leasing options?
So it's $4,000 I'm missing out on saving.
Well, we might get a higher
Can we wind
rental.
it back from 6 months? And it's a long
Three
time to
months.
leave two buildings empty.
Well, if you said, yeah, three months.
Three, and then we could look at,
Or not at all.
Some people actually would like to see this
Sold.
Yeah, well, you can go on the list, Gary. I'm not saying we shouldn't sell this. I'm saying we should look at other possibilities, possible needs of the community before we go down this track with this sort of property.
okay.
Yeah. If it was a commercial building that had a factory in it, that's a different matter. But this is clearly something that's been already in the community space. That's why I'm interested in it. I did have another question too, because I'm happy to move for a 3-month delay to make sure that Gary has his democratic opportunity to sell everything that isn't tied down. But the 28 million in the municipal endowment fund reserve, what's that currently used for? To save interest?
Offset rates effectively through the interest savings.
What's the legal requirements on the municipal endowment fund about what it's to be used for?
So we've had previous papers on this. So effectively, our goal, we're supposed to do our best to seek a return on it, and the advice we've had, we should try seek a commercial return, and it's where our weighted average interest rate compares to market rates. And at the moment, we're probably okay. If the rates were, the differential was to get larger, we'd probably have to bring it back to council and look whether or not we actioned it or drove it harder. One of the challenges that Nick brought to a previous council meeting or committee meeting was whether or not we could get approval to repatriate that money back to general funds, but there were quite a few challenges in that and we didn't pursue that opportunity. It's highly unlikely, I understand, Nick, to actually get permission to do that.
You know, it would be very unlikely to get that permission. Effectively, we've got to preserve the real value of the capital of the fund. The use of the income from it is a council decision, effectively. In the past, it's been used to offset rates.
Okay. There was talk at one stage about using it to support heritage building renovations, wasn't there?
There have been a number of suggestions for it. Effectively, you could buy a heritage building with the fund, tenanted it, and then you'd be deriving a market rental from those tenants. So it would tick the box, yeah.
Okay. Thanks. I'll wait for the resolution to come up.
Councillor Ryan.
Or Richard, perhaps you can answer this for me. With respect to the differential in terms of rates or net sales, you know, the few $1,000s difference, isn't it also $1 million into our cash fund, which is improving debt to revenue?
Yeah, so ultimately it just gives us greater resilience in terms of our debt to revenue ratio, so to bring our debt down, which I think is what you're asking.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Angela.
There's a resolution on the table somewhere that I might have moved, that we get an update on the Municipal Endowment Fund and what council wants to do with it strategically going forward, to go to a briefing. And that, I'm assuming, is in a schedule somewhere? You're just going to say yes now, aren't you?
I probably assume
Yes.
it is in a schedule. If you ask me where the schedule is, I can't give you an answer.
Um,
I'll not be cheeky.
no,
sorry.
I wouldn't ask
Yeah.
that. But I think that this should have been included because we don't have a strategy going forward for what we want to do with that fund.
Well,
Well, we have an old strategy.
yeah, effectively through the 10-year plan, we've banked the interest savings from the endowment fund against our revenue and our costs. So we've effectively assumed at least 5.5%. If there's a strategy, and to be fair, it's a really good question, and I know the mayor might hit me, I believe there's an opportunity to improve our bottom line potentially if we invest in certain property over and above that returns over and above the debt payment. And so a briefing is on the cards to discuss the overall property again, not the Hamilton Properties argument, but the whole endowment property scenario again.
Yeah. So can
Yes, there's a briefing coming. I just need to schedule it.
yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
You didn't hit me.
Did you hear that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I saw it.
There.
So Councillor Dave, have you... Councillor Dave, do you want to get your motion on the board? Yeah, sure.
I'm pretty sure that the whole rationale for the Municipal Endowment Fund was back a long, long time ago. The government gave money to all the local authorities so that they could invest in land on the proviso that that property generated revenue to subsidise the rates, so to speak. It was they were worried about all the local authorities going bankrupt, I think.
So
And so the rationale for and Nick is following that, I think, following the law, and his recommendation is that the best return we can get from this is to sell the property.
It's a better return than leasing it
Yes,
based
sorry,
on
yeah,
the current
the
market rental.
better of the options we have, yes.
The, just stepping back in time a wee bit, the original grant from the government was for land,
Yep.
which was given to councils for, income generating purposes. Yields, of
Just
course.
as I said, yeah.
Indeed. The way the leases were originally structured, Glasgow leases, 21 years perpetual with a perpetual right of renewal and a review only every 21 years, meant that the yields from those in assets was
On year 20 was terrible.
yeah, very, very low. So what the council has done historically is they have encouraged the freeholding, the sale to the lessee. When that money is received, it goes into the bank, if you like, and generates a return, which is typically greater than the yield you'd have got from the ground lease. So let's say, for argument's sake, you're getting sort of on average 4% for the ground lease. You might get 5.5% in the bank. And then in the past, when that...
Or 5.5% on reducing our debt.
Correct.
Yeah.
When the levels have reached a certain level in the past, the council has then invested in higher yielding property assets, and we still have a number of those. We have 3 of those. And they generally typically have generated somewhere in the sort of 7 to 9% return.
Thank you.
On the board, and it's got a mover and a seconder, and so we'll go to debate on the motion. There is only a motion on the board, and it's yours. There is no No one has moved a motion. No one has moved anything apart from Dave and seconded by Paula. Did I?
If you're happy to withdraw it, that's fine.
I'm happy to withdraw. You want to leave it there? Okay.
The effect is going to be the same. For the record, it's probably just good to leave that there. I think the effect will be exactly the same.
All right. Deputy. Okay, so we're going to debate. Well, we've moved past that. So, Councillor Dave, do you want to speak first?
I've said a lot of it already, but I simply don't think we've yet looked at necessarily at the possible alternatives that might be around at the moment. I don't think 3 months is going to hurt us or hurt the Chief Executive's target very much. I appreciate Gary's point about basically maximising your return. I think at the end of the day, if there's no other good use for that, that will probably be what this council should decide to do. But I don't think because of the fast tracking almost of the sale proposal now, that's a bit too fast. I don't think we've considered the other possible uses. We're well aware that several organisations, largish community organisations, are looking for a home. I'm aware that there are others in the health sphere that are starting to look for that sort of home as well. Let's see if they can be matched up with this need. And if you're talking about a DHB funded organisation like that, you're certainly going to get market rental. It's not a matter of community rentals. So there are some possibilities that don't necessarily break the bank. Let's have a look and see whether any of them really are coming up in the lift. 3 months is long enough to do that. And I think Angela's point about us having a look at the future way the Municipal Endowment Fund should be used in a sort of generic way we should also be doing that within the 3 month period, so that we're not just doing these as one-offs all the time. And that's perhaps my biggest problem with this. Every time one comes up every 4 or 6 months, it's suddenly we remember that we haven't actually really got too much of a strategic handle on the property we own around the city. We just treat them as financial operations. We don't treat them as strategic things where we could do something that's got greater long-term use for the city.
Councillor Paula.
Actually, now having heard Dave speak, I'm not sure I could add much except to say I wasn't trying to take the wheels off the wagon. I was just asking a legitimate question about whether there was a use that delivered economic, social, cultural and any other well-beings at the same time. And I wasn't satisfied that we knew enough about that. So this just gives a little bit of time to look into that. And totally support what Councillor O'Leary said, because she's done right to remind us that we already had an existing action, which was to talk about the endowment fund. And hopefully, it would be nonsense to not do that in the same time frame at this point in time. So I'll just leave it there. This is going to come back to us soon enough, so let's get some heads around it.
Deputy Mayor Martin.
I'm sure Mr Wells loves working for this council in terms of what was a straightforward, simple thing is we can help Mr Wells ensuring that it's never straightforward with us. But let's move this quickly. I agree with Councillor McPherson's point in terms of opportunities. I think, however, we just have to be very clear as to the need still to, dare I say it, balance our books and make sure that we do get a good return on a property, unless there's a compelling point community lease. Councillor Dave's right, if it's a DHB funded, there may be some other really good return options. Thank you.
Councillor Jeff.
Yeah, I'll be brief. Look, I'm not really convinced that we should actually deviate from the process of selling it. We've just had an LTP where the rates has been 9.7%. We've got a debt revenue, we've got very little room to move on that, and I actually don't want to deviate from selling this. I just want to get on and sell it, use the money.
We're going to the board to vote, Leo. Sorry, mate. So we're voting on the amendment first, which is the Councillor Dave, Councillor Paula amendment.
We were looking. He just wants to know who to look at.
Hey, no talking, please.
The amendment is declared equal. Those for Deputy Mayor, Councillors Bunting, O'Leary, McPherson and Southgate. Those against, Councillors Mallett, Hamilton, Taylor and Tooman and King.
So I'll go with my vote, which is against the motion.
So the amendment is lost.
Against the amendment.
The amendment is lost.
So the motion becomes the motion. The staff recommendation.
Surprise. That's usually casting vote again.
Deputy Mayor.
Martin, vote.
Martin, we're waiting for you.
Vote, Martin.
Deputy Mayor.
You're sitting there pontificating, man. You're the king of the world, isn't it?
He wants to use his casting vote.
The motion is equal.
No. Shh. It's too late for that. It's too late for that.
If you've been unduly influenced.
No, it's what was that? That's
Yeah, no, come here then. Come here. You're not taking the seat.
if I write this down. It just goes.
You've got to vote for it.
The motion is declared carried.
I think what's three quite quick papers, and then we go into public excluded, and we can stop for a cup of tea if that's okay. So yeah, just slip in and out, but we're yeah, I did, yeah. Okay, so item 16, page 190.
Thank you, Worship. This is a relatively straightforward matter, I hope.
Jinx.
Effectively, we have a win-win for both Wintec and the gardens. Wintec are paring back, reducing their leased area. The gardens are taking over that space in order to develop further gardens. There's a cost of 50K to hire a new gardener, which is offset by new rental coming in from Wintec, so it's cost neutral in terms of that maintenance. And there's a little bit of money for development of a shared space which will be used for the gardens to store equipment and plant, which is provided for in the existing budgets in year one. Happy to take any questions.
Councillor Ryan.
Nick, just a query comment that came back to me from one of the workers there that involved in the chainsaws and that sort of thing. They were worried that they were losing their space or whatever. Is this new proposed compound encompass that area, or?
Yes, it does, but what it is also providing is enclosed and covered space. So currently the yard that they operate out of is open. This will be 2 containers with a lid over it effectively, so that provides covered space but also more secure storage space.
Okay, so essentially it's more and better?
Yeah,
equal?
Yes, I'd characterise it as an increase in the quality of the space, effectively. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Gary.
Just signalling I'm happy to move.
Okay, moved by Gary, seconded by Deputy Mayor. Councillor Dave.
Is this going to be consistent, I think it is from what you're saying, with the new resolution we passed in the LTP with developing the final 13 gardens?
Absolutely.
So it's going to free up space for that.
Yes, it effectively enables that work to happen because Wintec currently have quite a large area attached to one of their lease arrangements. That is relinquished under this new arrangement here.
Cool.
And further to that, we get the barn that they've been using. So Peter needs that with the more gardens. We actually need more storage space. So this actually works for everyone.
Great, thanks. I'll second it if it's not already.
Okay, all those for? Any against? Carried unanimously. Okay, Beetham Park Golf Waikato 2019 limited lease.
I haven't really anything to add to this. I think the report is clear and self-explanatory, but I'm happy to take questions.
Moved by Councillor Paula, seconded. No questions yet. Seconder, Councillor Ryan, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, you're number 1 on the list.
Yeah, as you're aware, there are other interests in the surrounding area in terms of potential sites for a major community facility. That is one of the options. I take it that nothing in this compromises at all that particular possibility?
No, it doesn't. So master planning for the entire greenbelt space is ongoing. Yes. This business would be a party to that. Yeah. They've been there a long time. We would envisage them carrying on.
So this is purely a status quo and it won't have any impact whatsoever on a potential use of some surrounding land there.
No. And I would also make the comment that in the past the operators of this business have been quite obliging in terms of adjusting boundaries and their leased area. Right. They don't have to, but they have. Yeah, so that's very helpful. You know, if a particular prominent community group found a potential area, you're quite relaxed that that interchange would work. Thank you. Absolutely.
Councillor Dave.
Yeah, I'm just wondering why the lease period is so short. I know originally when we gave short leases to this to the ProDrive people there, it was partly due to the fact that at some stage arterial road was slated to go through that part, connecting Willoughby Street through with Ulster, and that is no longer and hasn't for some time been on the plan. Yes. So I'm wondering why they're not getting the same sort of lease that
they're getting a 15
or
yeah,
something like that.
They are getting a 15-year lease. So
why is it say term 5 and then renewals? I thought they were 15 and renewals was the...
Yeah, no. So it's a 5-year initial term and then they've got 2 further 5-year renewals. So those are entirely at their discretion. If they exercise them, it runs through to 5, 10 or 15 years.
Is that what we giving other groups at the moment? Okay, fine.
Unless they specifically ask for some variation within that sort of envelope.
Okay.
But this is very standard commercial lease.
Okay.
Councillor Gary.
Sorry, and this is a little bit tangential to this, but you mentioned the Western, was it called the Western Greenbelt or whatever it's called?
Yes.
Which is the master plan concept you alluded to. Obviously, these guys have been spoken to about this, but and you may not be part of this or not, I don't know, but there's when we discussed it, I raised the issue that there was a heck of a lot of people, surprisingly large number of entities within that space, and there was going to be consultation and all sorts of things going on of at least one entity that's in there that has come to me about the issue and has not been consulted. So has the consultation started, or is that?
No, it's yet to kick off, but Lance
okay.
will probably be able to fill
Okay,
you in on
all
more
right.
detail.
It's gone on our website today, I think. I got an email.
Okay, that'll be why they haven't been consulted
So that's kicking
as
off,
of last
yeah.
week.
So there's a series, Jen's organising a series of meetings, so that'll be pretty soon.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question.
Okay, we'll just vote verbally if no one's got any debate. All those for, any against, carried unanimously. Okay, we now move to item 18198, Crosby Road, adjacent to Pirate Stadium, Vodafone New Zealand Limited new lease. We're on page 198, moved by Councillor Garry, seconded by Councillor Jeff. All those for, any against, carried unanimously. We now move to a resolution to exclude the public, moved by myself, seconded by Deputy Mayor. All those for, any against, carried unanimously.
Because I'm just...
Yeah, we're stopping now until 4:30.